All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to another DH Tribe Comic Book Reading Club podcast. This is podcast number 2, and it is on Avengers Endgame. I'm here with Jennifer Henriquez. Say hello, Jen.
Hi, all.
And I'm here with Brenda Brand. Say hello, Brenda.
Greetings, everyone.
And myself, Tori, and we will be discussing various questions moderated by Brenda Brand herself. And without further ado, I will pass over the mic to Brenda.
All right. So, before we discuss our emotional upheaval with Avengers, let's start with the opening. What did you guys make of that picturesque, beautiful scene at Hawkeye's house, and then that very quickly turned into this kind of scene from a horror movie? Did it make you guys care about Hawkeye?
Right. So I've never really liked Hawkeye. I never really clicked with Hawkeye in any of the other Avengers movies. I think a lot of it had to do with just lack of solo movie, perhaps, but maybe not even that, because I do like Black Widow. So there was something missing from his character that I've never really clicked with. And having seen this picturesque family scene. He's kind of retiring. He's wants to be a dad and a family man, and then that's all kind of pulled out from underneath him. Hit me a lot harder than I was expecting. Like, I didn't go into Endgame emotionally prepared to even think about needing to have emotions for Hawkeye, and then I ended up feeling something for Hawkeye.
Interesting. I kind of felt the opposite, right? I didn't really, in the sense that I never really cared about Hawkeye. I didn't necessarily think that, um, versus like the other Avengers who sort of got all these great like character arcs and moments. Like we had that in other films with Hawkeye, but I just didn't seem to care, right? We had those moments of like Pietro and Hawkeye and like Nat and Hawkeye, and I didn't really seem to care as much as with the other Avengers. What worked for me with that particular opening is that I think that it worked as an epilogue scene. And so there was this kind of natural continuation between Infinity War and Endgame that you don't see in other franchises, where it was part 1 and part 2 where they feel very distinct from one another. This felt like a natural extension of Infinity War, right? And I think it's because those first 20 minutes work as an epilogue scene, which I thought was a really smart idea to do, right? Because those first 20 minutes really are just the end of Infinity War before you kick off Endgame.
Yeah, I like that reading because it makes it feel more like a 5-hour movie rather than a 2-hour movie and then a 3-hour movie, right? I like that reading, John.
Yeah, and I like that you brought up other movies with that because I'm reminded of Harry Potter and how disconnected I felt between Deathly Hallows Part 1 and Part 2, where they were very different movies.
Definitely, and this did not feel like
Right,
that.
it just kind of
This was
rolled right
definitely
over.
yeah, it coalesced very nicely. I'll be frank, I don't care about Hawkeye. Nothing in the movie made me care about him, and that includes a scene with his daughter, which is awful. I apologize for that.
You didn't
I
like the scene
just
with his
didn't.
daughter?
No, like it didn't make me care about him. I
Oh.
care about his family. I just didn't care about him. I don't know why that is. Um, I'll take that up with my therapist. But more than anything, I think as I was watching that, because I feel like we've seen this scene before, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where did we see this before? Was this in Infinity Wars?
The Hawkeye scene?
Yeah.
You saw it in like Age of Ultron, right? With him and his family. Having that time with his family and trying to get these Avengers back on the same page, right? You had that idealistic, idyllic kind of setting in the background. And so I think I could see your point that it kind of sounds redundant. I think like the father-daughter scene that that's trying to like get your heart to wrench is done even better with Ant-Man and his daughter, because we've actually, the Ant-Man series actually has given so much time in developing, Scott as a father. versus Hawkeye as a father.
Well,
Mhm.
that's definitely why you have that scene, right? To remind you of Hawkeye's humanity.
Hmm.
And I mean, we'll get to that question later, but I think in terms of the narrative, I was more because when we left Infinity War, it was very much, oh my God, Tony's in space. How's he gonna get back home? Oh my
Yes.
God, the Avengers are destroyed. Like most of them are dead, or if they're not dead, they're basically hollow shells at this point. What do you do, right?
Hmm.
So to go back, it definitely added a moment of this is what it means on a personal level,
Hmm.
but I don't know. I wanted to get back into the action and see how we're gonna save Tony. How are we gonna get the Avengers back together? So I was a little bit anxious, and that scene did nothing to calm me from that anxiety.
I
I
can.
will say we watched it twice, and the second time, as soon as Tony showed up on the screen, I just started crying.
Oh.
You know?
And I think that scene is meant to be like a breather, right? Because
Yeah,
Hawkeye isn't part of Infinity War, and so there are many fans out there who were like, where is he? Where is he?" And I think you kind of know that he's out there, like living out his 2-year ban, and you don't know how that's going. And I think in the same way that the whole Ant-Man and the Wasp movie, and then its end credits work to sort of show Scott's life in parallel to what's happening in Infinity War at that same time. And then you get that end credit scene of, Hope and her family disappearing and Scott being lost in the quantum realm.
Mhm.
Spoiler alert. I mean, if you haven't seen the movie, then I'm sorry. Why are you watching
you
this
shouldn't be listening.
podcast? Or listening to this podcast? But I think that that's kind of why the Hawkeye scene was put into that kind of into
Definitely.
the top of the movie, right? To
Yeah,
Right.
see, okay, here, let's check in with him. Look, we
yeah.
haven't heard from him in these past 3 hours of Infinity War, right?
I totally understand its purpose. I do. It wasn't enough for me to care.
I agree,
Yeah.
and I think that I think it was, just like all the Avengers are not going to be loved by everyone.
Yeah, that's
You
true.
know, this was made to like appease one section or sect of the fan base.
Well, it was also meant to help connect the Avengers, right? So many of them are fathers. So many are grounded by this drive, these families that they have. So I think narratively it makes sense to include it.
I agree, like narratively and thematically, right? Because the
Yeah,
movie is very much grounded in family.
Mhm.
definitely. Yeah. All right. So let's move on to our second question. Talk to me about Steve and Tony's relationship. How did you like Endgame's treatment of it?
Good
I think
question.
you should start with that. 'Cause you said that you ended up crying the second time you watched Endgame when Tony appeared on the screen.
I did. So the first time I mean I cared. It wasn't that I didn't care. It was just not it didn't hit me as hard the second time I knew it was coming. But when when Tony comes back and he's just angry at Cap, I liked that they didn't like Jen said actually, she mentioned it yesterday. Like she liked that they didn't just move on, right? It wasn't like that's a different movie.
Mhm.
Um, they're past their issues and they're all cool, right? No, you still have to deal with the emotional ramifications of that. And I really enjoyed that. I like that he was so angry and hostile towards Cap, and Cap didn't really have anything to say in response, just we have stuff to do, right? And so
Mhm.
when Tony ultimately comes back and he looks Steve straight in the eye and says, I've realized that resentment is corrosive. That hit me in all the feels just because you see these two men having gone through so much and needing to move past this to save the world. But I also think it speaks to the level of respect the two characters have for each other, right?
Absolutely.
I really like that growth. Obviously, time helps, right? 5 years passed between Infinity War and Endgame.
Mhm.
Um, but I really like how they treated these characters, and I like that they didn't just move past the awkwardness.
Yeah, what I liked about it a lot too was, for me, it felt very reminiscent of when you have a close friend and you get into this huge fight over something and you kind of drift apart and there's animosity there because you're like, I can't believe so and so did this. Like, I can't. And then through whatever event that brings you back together, and it's like those feelings are still there, but you also kind of miss them, and you've got this job to do or this thing to do, and then you kind of work together through it and you get to like a more common ground, and then hopefully from there that kind of rekindling blossoms. And I felt like the movie kind of captured their relationship really well, this coming back together, it being awkward, them still being mad and having feelings, and then kind of moving forward from there. I enjoy it. Felt very authentic to me, like very organic and authentic.
Yeah, well, Brenda sort of shared what we had talked about yesterday because we saw the movie again.
Hmm.
Um,
Which,
so
by the
I
way, I can't emotionally forgive Jen for convincing me to go a second time.
uh but she also wanted to go see it for a second time, so it's unfair that she's actually laying the blame on me 100%.
I need to be unreasonable for a moment, Jen. Let me have this one.
We're
Thank you.
Hufflepuffs. We're very unstable
Um,
emotionally.
I'm
Right.
Ravenclaw and I refuse to accept this. And so so yeah, I told Brenda that I really enjoyed the fact that it wasn't a clean slate. Just because they all suffered this monumental loss, it wasn't just a clean slate for Tony and Steve. They didn't just get to magically be best friends after this immense loss. They
Hmm.
still had their personal issues. Tony still felt very much betrayed,
Hmm.
right? By Steve. Like when he comes back from space and they're arguing, and he said, I had this great idea of like robot men around the world. And, you
Yeah.
know, and Steve is like, no, well, that didn't turn out so right. Well, it's like, well, you told me that when we'd win, if we win, we'd do it together. And if we lost, we do it together. Well, we lost and you weren't there.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And then
And
he rips out his core and hands it to Steve. That
Oh.
moment, yeah, I
Oh.
love that
that
moment.
was incredibly heartbreaking, right? It was
Yeah,
this moment of Tony saying, I give up, because he was so monumentally broken by Peter's death, right?
Hmm.
And Steve doesn't understand that. Steve is more on the like, we need to do, let's go get Thanos, right? Like, let's think about a solution here. He's trying to be practical. And for Tony, the practical Mr. Fix It man,
Hmm.
he cannot be a fixable solution to all of this, right? And so I think you see men at a crossroads, and that's really interesting to me because that's been their entire journey, is these men at crossroads. I said that they're like two ships passing in a night, right?
Hmm.
Each going on their own paths, and then for a moment they're together in this one time and space, and they can see each other. And I think that's what represents Tony and Steve's relationship, right? The whole Avengers initiative is them just being there in that collective moment together, but they're both at their like individual paths, and eventually they're going to cross each other, right? They're not going to see each other again. um and so you have these men kind of on these individual journeys that are taking them towards one, for Tony being more selfless, and for Steve being more selfish, right?
Hmm.
And so I think the movie did a really good job of highlighting those differences and trying to work through, the issues that tore them apart in Civil War, coming together, yes, for a common mission, but they're not going back to the Steve and Tony that were really, good buds, and all the other Infinity War movies. They're arriving at something very different. They could still be really good friends and, respect each other, but they're different now. And I
Yeah.
yeah,
really enjoyed that.
yeah. I think the fact that they're allowed this space to breathe and be away from each other for a little bit and then come back and build something new, something different, right? I think is important just because a lot of us have had those relationships, right? Where it's perfect, it's wonderful, and then suddenly it just kind of falls apart.
Hmm.
And then
Right.
having a model to see that it won't be the same thing but you can still come back and build something different. It won't be the same, but it's okay if it still exists in some way, shape, or form. I think is really important, especially when we're living in a world of absolutes, right? It's one way or the other. And I think in seeing uh, Iron Man and Captain America come back together and saying, all right, so that last one kind of fell apart, but we can build something new and different. Let's try it. That willingness to still work together despite their differences for this one common goal, I think, is narratively beautiful and necessary for us to see on the big screen.
Right, right.
Yeah, absolutely. I love your comment of how, you know, we do live in a world of absolutes right now, and to see these two men who do have these opposing views come together and still work to each other really is just something
A
important.
lesson in compromise, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's something that's important for this generation to, grow up with, right?
Yeah.
You might not agree with everything, but that doesn't mean that you can't work together.
Hmm.
Yeah, you can still respect the other person on the other side and learn from them and
Absolutely.
teach them as a result too. And I think that's a beautiful commentary that the directors and writers and actors gave us in this movie.
Hmm.
So I'm very appreciative of that.
And in that sense, I do, the Russo brothers set out with that goal, right? Like the reason why they lost in Infinity War was because Steve and Tony weren't together. They weren't on the same page together. And so
Right.
see that play out in Endgame, and why they were victorious was because they were able to be on the same page together. I think they met their goals.
Definitely. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had a lot of feelings about the cast as a whole together interacting post snap. A lot between, so I guess for me, Cap and Tony go back to Civil War. For me, that's kind of where, um as everything was falling apart in Endgame, or not falling apart, but like they're trying to come back together to redo this. Um, I kept going back to Civil War. I kept going back to Civil War and feeling those kind of feelings of, like, dad and dad aren't like talking anymore. They're getting a divorce, and like, what do I do, right? And then to kind of see them, as you have been saying, come back together and, you know save the day, if you will, if we're calling it that at this point, um, is, um, I like it. I like it a lot, and I like that they brought in these kind of, I don't know. I don't know. Would you say that Cap and Tony are Type A personalities, like very alpha men? Like I felt like they both very much were like, like, we're gonna be the boss, and then not agreeing, and then headbutting, and then of course Civil War, and then that kind of being the death of their friendship, partnership, companionship, and then coming back together in Endgame, like, really touched
I
me.
don't know if it was so much a leadership thing, so much as a difference in perspective
Yeah.
that broke them, right?
Right.
I think it's honestly, I think it's a little reductive, but also um I guess mean maybe to say that they want to be the alpha male because I don't think they've ever really been that.
Yeah.
Um, I think with Tony and Steve, they were such good friends and they both wanted to do good and that brought them together.
Yeah.
And then this thing with Bucky happened and Tony's like, this dude killed my parents.
Yeah.
And
Right.
Steve is like, yeah, but he's a victim too. Tony
Yeah.
couldn't wrap his head around that. And I think the fact that they weren't listening to each other, right? And I mean, I don't want to make everything political, but it does seem like, right? Where
I think we
in
lost you there for a
when,
second.
oh,
And I
sorry. So I don't want to make everything political, but when you see these two characters who fundamentally respect each other,
Hmm. Hmm.
but aren't listening to each other, and then they have that fallout and this massive tragedy happens. I think it speaks to our lived reality, right? And how we can still respect each other and have these different opinions, but we need to listen to each other if we want to come to real solutions.
Mhm.
And so I think that's really what this movie does for me, at least in that respect. I also kept thinking about it as like, what if this were me with my BFF? Like,
Yeah.
OMFG, I would lose 5 years, and I don't know, but I can't go a day without texting you guys. So to think about having like a wife, like not a wife, but I guess a husband in my case, and like, or a wife, who knows? I don't know, but like having a significant other building this entire life and not sharing that with you,
Right.
like that would, I don't know, that just seems so lonely and tragic and sad. Although if we're gonna be realistic about me, it'd be like getting dogs or more cats. So that's the part that I'd be sharing with you. I guess that's it.
I agree. I mean, I agree. I think that's why you brought up that line that Tony says, resentment be so corrosive, right? And that's what you see over the course of Civil War and
Mhm.
you know, Avengers Infinity War, and definitely in Endgame you see these two men who clearly do care for one another, but because of their differences,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
they were apart and missed each other for so much of their lives.
Yeah, like Morgan didn't grow up with Uncle Steve, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like tossing her into the air, and because he's a super soldier, she gets to fly for a few seconds. Like that's so, that makes me sad, right? Like she might actually get Uncle some superhero or other, but she won't grow up with Uncle Steve. Like she won't grow up with her dad either, you know. So
Yeah.
I don't know. There's just a lot of things that just yeah, it hit me.
Right. I think on that note, I think a natural extension of this conversation would be to talk about how do you think the film dealt with the process of grief? Do you think it was an accurate portrayal? Do you think
Mm.
that the film fell short in some respects with each individual character?
That's an excellent segue. I think we can't talk about grief without acknowledging Thor, right?
Oh
And
my
his
god, I
emotional
know.
mess. I mean, I look, don't get me wrong, every character in this film lost a lot, but I think we often forget how much Thor lost, right? He
Right.
lost his mother, he lost his father, he lost like his people
His
as a
brother.
result of his sister, right? He lost his sister. He then lost half of his people when his ship was attacked by Thanos, and then he lost his best friends, right, when they were killed by Hela, and then subsequently when Heimdall was killed,
Mhm.
and then his brother.
Ugh.
He's like a man they were working to build something beautiful with. And immediately after they started repairing their relationship, where you saw that this actually might evolve into something different and great and wonderful, and maybe they'll finally get to a point where they are going to have each other's back, he dies,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Um, and then Thanos dusts half the universe. This man has lost so much. I don't blame him for being the mess that he was in Infinity. And I'm sorry, in Endgame. That was, I think, honestly, I actually don't know if I would have handled that kind of grief as well as Thor did. And as we know, the man did not handle it well.
He did not
Right.
handle it well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that the film did a really nice job of one, like validating the existence of Thor Dark World, right? Because that's the one
Yeah.
film universally fans agree like was not the best film in the world. But I do think that, it did a lot to kind of take Thor, who is this god, to an extreme, right? So he does portray this kind of extreme level of grief and depression, but he is also a god. He only lives in extremes.
Mhm.
And so I think that
Definitely.
it was appropriate that he kind of did collapse in the way that he did in Endgame. Um,
I like that, Jen, that whole extreme emotion. He's a god. Gods do everything in extremes, and it would make sense that his grief would be that extreme.
Yeah, and then not only is he a god, but he loses to a mortal. with being Thanos.
Well, and he's a god. He's lived for so long,
Yeah.
right? You, I mean, assuming they live for so long, right? And so they do lose, but not in such a short amount of time.
Right. What's a
Right.
battle? What's a battle with thousands lost to a whole half a universe populace lost, right?
Hmm.
I think
Right.
that's a war loss. That's different, right? That's a significant shift. And for Thor, I mean, his entire pantheon is gone. If we think about it, right? He's one left, and Valkyrie is might be qualified as a demigod, right?
Hmm.
And so his entire like social structure is gone, and in a matter of days, and because he goes from Hela to Thanos snapping everyone else away.
Yeah, the man just doesn't get a breather.
Hmm.
Right. And so I think that the film did a really nice job of, capitalizing on that grief and showing a very significantly different Thor. And honestly, I think that it gave Chris Hemsworth a lot to play with because, he's always been very vocal about, the limitations of Thor's character and how protective he and Taika were about what they created in Ragnarok.
Mm.
Um, and so I think that it was really important for him to be able to play this different side of Thor and to show a different side of Thor because as we all know, like Chris is incredibly funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And only really got to see that in like Ragnarok in its kind of full flesh. And so to be able to see that in Infinity War and kind of see that in Endgame and see other facets of Thor, I think was really important for Chris. And I think that's what motivated him to resign for these two movies because his obligation ended with Ragnarok.
I didn't know
And
that.
so it did. And so he had to resign for both Infinity War and Endgame. And so I don't think he would have resigned if he wasn't able to take Thor to these places.
Right, right. I think for me, the scene in kind of the depths of Thor's depression and grief that really I started crying in the I mind you I cried through about like 85% of the movie, but the scene that just
Girl.
killed me, just absolutely like killed me was he goes back in time, he sees his mom, that didn't kill me yet, but then he summons his hammer and he's like I'm still worthy and I was like I can't and I just was like in tears and like just cuz this whole time he's been beating himself up thinking he is no longer worthy because the snap happened all this
Okay.
bad. Yeah, go ahead.
Totally. Yeah, you know what? I actually really enjoyed the panic attack scene. That sounds awful. Um, more than anything, I like the visibility that that moment gave to like mental health, right?
Yeah, and he was so
You see,
vulnerable.
you see a god, and he's like, "I think I'm having a panic attack. I can't do this," and
Yeah.
he feels unworthy. He feels like he can't do this. I I cried through that, not because I'm like, "Oh yeah, yay," Thor is actually having feelings, more like, "Oh my god, he's going through this," right?
Yeah.
And it just I don't know, I really like his interpretation of that, right? And what that would look like for Thor.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
I'm very appreciative of the care that Chris Hemsworth gave in portraying that.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that scene a lot.
Because it could have easily have been like a comedy thing, right? Like where, oh yeah, yeah, we're playing this for shits and giggles and laughs,
Right.
right? But I didn't feel that way. I don't know. Maybe it was my emotional attachment to the character and his loss, but I didn't feel like it was done only for laughs.
Mhm.
I don't know. What
Right.
do you guys think?
I think Chris definitely imbued his performance, yes, with the levity that he is very comfortable with, but also there were moments where he felt very lost and vulnerable that he portrayed very well.
Definitely.
I think that, you know, I think it's always hard to sort of portray a grieving character like Thor, but I think he managed to balance that well, right? Um, and especially in those moments of his mom and his mom saying, yeah, you are an absolute failure."
Yeah, but
Okay.
that's okay, right? And acknowledging that failure isn't like that doesn't determine who you are and who you're gonna be.
Mhm.
It's just a natural part of living.
Right. And, they're gods. They're going to be massive failures at any given point in their long lives.
Mm-hmm.
And he needs to be able to move on from that,
Yeah.
right? Go forward and be better. And I think that was a reassuring message that ended up coming out of it, right? It's like, yes, you can be an absolute failure and that's okay, but that doesn't have to be your defining identity.
That doesn't have to be everything that you are. It's a part.
Right. I
Definitely.
think, and I think you see that highlighted in the other characters' journeys. Like, I think you see that in Black Widow too, right? It's that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, her line in from Avengers 1 until now is that she has red in her ledger that she needs to clear out. And so I think that, for her, she was already a massive failure at one point in her life. And all the Avengers stories have been about her being better, doing better, being the best version of herself. And so
Mm-hmm.
for Nat in Endgame, I loved Scarlett's portrayal there. I thought she hit apex there. Like, she hit just greatness in that character
She did
and how
so yeah, she did so well for
she
me there that I was
she
disappointed that her contract was up. I was like, "No, I want more. Do this more."
Yeah, I thought she played restrained grief so well.
Mhm.
When, she's getting all these reports from all parts of the universe, from Okoye to Rhodey to Carol and
Mhm.
Rocket,
Rocket, yeah.
and she's tearful,
Yeah.
and she allows one moment to cry for herself before, in front of Steve, before she, takes those tears away and smiles again and just tries to be jokey with Steve.
Mhm.
I thought she did that so well,
So
because
well.
here's that has experienced loss before,
Mhm.
but not to this magnitude, and yet she knows that someone still has to lead.
Mhm.
Someone still needs to be a leader, and that's what she's doing. But it doesn't mean that she's not hurting through the process.
Right.
It doesn't
Okay,
mean that she's not sad through the process.
definitely. While we are on the Black Widow discussion point, can we talk about that moment where she's in front of Hawkeye and she's like, and he tells her, "Don't give me hope," and she's like, "I'm sorry I couldn't give it to you sooner."
Oh.
Yeah,
I cried.
Same.
yeah,
Yeah, same, same. I couldn't handle my life in that moment, just because I get Hawkeye. Yeah, he went off the deep end. He was killing people and stuff, and yeah,
Mhm.
whatever. But the fact that she couldn't give that hope to her friend, right? And I really like that Endgame ultimately becomes about these personal relationships, right? These people who have been fighting together and have been fighting not just together but for each other, right?
yeah,
I think that scene did a really good job of showing and highlighting that Black Widow isn't about herself. She's about family, and her family are the Avengers.
yes,
So to have her want to give um, Hawkeye his family back, that was very poignant, I think. And I think I love how ScarJo played that.
Me
I
too.
absolutely agree. And that's where, like, Hawkeye becomes important in that regard, is
Yeah.
just through as an extension of Black
Widow.
Widow's character.
Yeah.
Like, it's that sibling relationship. It's that here are two humans playing on this superhuman playing field, right? And they're still trying to do their job and be kick ass, right? The fact that they can keep up with these incredibly supercharged beings
Mhm.
says a lot about humanity, I think. But it's always their sibling relationship that kind of binds them together, right? It's one rescuing the other. And so in that moment of, I'm sorry I couldn't give it back to you until now, I think just reiterates just how close and deep their bond is.
Yeah.
Right? Which, kicks off that last arc for them
Oh,
in Wolf,
she
right?
broke my
Yeah.
heart.
Yeah.
and why it's so difficult in that moment.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Um, I think, yeah, I think you have a lot of like personal stories being leveraged in this movie. I agree with that point. Were there other personal narratives that um stuck to you guys? I think Tori, you were kind of fascinated with the Gamora storyline.
Yeah, yeah. So, Rocket Raccoon has like quickly worked his way into my heart. I know I get a lot of flame for this. I didn't really love Guardians of the Galaxy 1 or 2. Like I liked them, they were fun. I wouldn't go out of my way to like, buy the movies or anything like that, right? They were cool. I liked them, don't get me wrong. But I love Rocket and I love Gamora. Like those two characters just like really like I don't know what it was about them. I just really enjoyed the two of them. And I kind of had this as I was watching the movie, right, stuff happens, plots. Oh, I guess we're spoiling things here, but Gamora obviously she's one of the ones in Infinity Wars who doesn't get snapped, right? She gets brutally murdered by her air quote father to get the soul stone. And she's one of the ones like Natasha who can't come back no matter how hard you try. That's not something you can undo. Um, I haven't quite processed my feelings on how I feel about our Gamora being replaced by Gamora, if that makes sense. Like thus,
Mm-hmm.
like I don't know how I feel about that just yet. I'm still sorting those feelings out. And my initial reaction was no, this isn't acceptable, but
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm starting to open up more as it's kind of been like I saw the movie opening weekend, so it sat with me a little while now. So
Mm-hmm.
but that really I don't know what it was. Like it was very much it gave a replaceable feeling to me, and I don't know that I liked that given her death in Infinity Wars.
I
Mm-hmm.
think I would have been a little happier if she had just not come back. Um, I actually really like Gamora. I don't say that because I hate her or anything. I really enjoy her
Me too.
character. And I really like Zoe Saldana. Like I don't know,
Me
just
too.
as an actress, I really dig her. But what bothers me is I think actually it doesn't bother me. I think the reason I wanted her just to stay dead is I don't think there was anywhere else to take her character, right?
Mm,
She had gotten to a point where she had grown and developed. She was starting to establish a relationship with her sister, and she was good. She was the moral core center of the Guardians. And so to lose that, it disrupts the entire team in a very profound way,
right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So it gives them meat to move forward. Like it gives that sounds awful. It gives them like
But it
material to
does.
move
Yeah.
forward, right? In a way that if they had kept Gamora alive, they wouldn't have, right?
Hmm.
So I can understand why they did it. Because you still want to keep Zoe and you still want to keep the character, but
Mm-hmm.
you want to give them something to play with so that there are actual emotional stakes. Otherwise, they're just happy, and happy is boring.
Yeah.
It, it is. I mean, I think that's why happy endings are reserved for finales.
Endings. Yeah.
Right. And I agree. I think that having 2014 Gamora, is that right? Come
Yeah.
back into play allows Zeldana and Gunn to kind of push the Gamora character in a different way, because this is someone who didn't have those redemptive arcs now, right? She
Right.
Yeah.
didn't have that time with the Guardians. In fact, that this Gamora could very well be more influenced by Nebula
Hmm.
in a way, right? A Nebula that's been touched and reformed by the Gamora that died.
Right.
And I do think that the Gamora that died in Infinity War reached that kind of natural conclusion for her character. And the Gamora that we have now is a lot rougher around the edges in a way that can be a little bit more consistent with the comic iteration
Hmm.
that fans across would probably like. but it allows for different kind of redemptive arcs for her or natural growth arcs for her.
Definitely. It opens up a narrative space that I think will be exciting for the upcoming Guardian movies, but also for Zoe to play. So,
Right.
well, I understand that's a little, I don't know. I don't mind it so much, actually.
Yeah, I
I'm
think it.
go ahead.
We all know that Zoe wanted to come back for Guardians 3. How do you do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not have her be either the stereotypical woman at home, or like fall into that, right? Or have her without, or not, because you don't want her. Well, I actually do want her in a leadership role, but I guess that might be a little intimidating for these writers. I don't know. It would have been fun. Now I'm gonna get resentful that Gamora died and we couldn't have like her replace Peter Quill as the leader of the Guardians.
That's what I wanted.
Yeah, honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm gonna switch my answer from I don't mind it to I'm gonna be resentful. I don't care if it's corrosive.
You're resentful 3000?
Oh my goodness, I can't.
No.
Actually, on that note, you guys, the women. We need to talk about the women.
Yeah.
Not the superhero women though. We'll get to them in a second, but I'm talking more about the girls who seem to ground their male counterparts, right?
Mhm.
So people like Peggy, Pepper, and Hope for like their romantic interests, and then the daughters too, Morgan, Cassie, and
I have a
Lila.
lot of feelings about Cassie right now. Like, I'm ready for Stinger. Like, I'm ready, like, for Young Avengers. Like, please let me have this. But I'm really
So,
hoping we see Stinger soon. Maybe Ant-Man 3.
yeah. Hello.
Hi, we
Yeah,
can hear you. Yeah, you're good.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited for. Is it Stinger? I thought it was Stature.
Stature. I thought it was. Oh, maybe. I think she's
I think.
Stinger in Young Avengers. Maybe. I don't
Okay.
know. I might be
I've read.
tripping.
Okay,
But
I read Stature and other things. Maybe it's just a comic
yeah,
iteration.
yeah.
Um. Yeah, definitely. I think that the film did a really nice job of demonstrating that at the core of these male characters and these central male characters, there's these women that ground them, right, that push them forward and motivate their actions.
hmm I just looked it up. She's Stinger starting in May 2016, and she's Stature in May 2006.
yeah. So
So,
she's both.
so she's
I
done
Okay.
I
both.
like to think about these women a lot like you know how in the Flash comics Iris West is always
There.
like, okay, number one, rude. Um but she's like his lightning rod, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She keeps him grounded in this. Like a lot like Lois Lane is for Superman, right?
Right.
Their emotional attachments to Earth or to humanity. And so I really like that they played that up in this film, right? Jen pointed out something yesterday that I think I'll let her speak on with Tony and Pepper. But with Steve, every movie that we've seen, he's had what is it? A pocket watch? I don't even know it.
It's like a compass.
Yeah,
Okay.
with
I thought
with
it was a compass, but I think it's actually a
it's a
pocket watch.
pocket
I don't
watch.
know,
Yeah,
but it has
like on Full
Peggy's
Metal.
picture. It has Peggy's picture, right? And
Yeah.
so I the fact that he got his happy ending made my heart sing, frankly. But I really like that it's that for him, like Jen pointed out, a lot of his story has been about always doing the right thing, always sacrificing himself.
hmm
And in this movie, he finally chose himself, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's done his service. He's been America's ass for so long, right? I love that joke, by
I
the way.
loved that line so much. That was so
But
funny.
right? But
Yeah.
he's given so much to the world, right? Not just his country, but the world, that he finally has a moment where he's like, you know what? I need to follow Natasha and Tony's advice
hmm
and
Mm-hmm.
get myself some of that life that they're always talking about.
Yes.
I really, really enjoyed that, and I was very happy to see him have that. But it connects him in a very subtle way to Tony with Pepper, and then to Scott with Hope, right?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I think Jen pointed out yesterday that uh, Paul Rudd does such an effective job of playing up that love that he has for Hope, right? And I'll
Yeah.
let her talk about that in a sec. But I really like how ultimately he, and by he I mean Captain America, was able to be connected thematically to these other two characters, and I really liked how that worked out.
Yeah, definitely. I don't remember everything we talked about yesterday, but
I'll remind you.
thank you. Um, yeah, I love Paul Rudd. I mean, I love him. I
He's
think
real pretty.
he is so pretty. Um, but he's
I'm
such
sorry, but you have. Oh no, yeah, he's awesome. He's hilarious.
yes. I think he
He
would.
bent over and was like, "Flick me." I could just see Paul Rudd's face light up like a Christmas tree. It was just so beautiful.
It was awesome. He was such a gem in the movie because he was able to carry so many emotions for the
Mm-hmm.
audience. He was able to carry the desperation. He was able to carry the levity. He was able to carry the emotional kind of tandem that kind of held these characters together. And so, having Paul in that role has just been fantastic, I think, for Marvel because he really just has great comedic timing, but also like a great emotional timing. Um, but yeah, I think that that's the one thing about, you know, Scott and and Hope is that they've been able to work so well as a romantic pairing in contrast to maybe like Thor and Jane because of like Paul, I think, and how he's able to sell that romantic tension between the two. Not that Evangeline Lilly doesn't, but I think that she's she comes from like TV world and Lost
Mhm.
and being stuck in like kind of this love triangle for 6-7 years. And so I think she's very careful about like how she portrays women characters
Mm.
in live action. And so I don't think she always wants to be just like the romantic interest.
Mhm.
I think she wants to be a little bit more than that, and I think Paul is able to respond to that, and he's completely and utterly fine just being the romantic interest and being the funny one, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that versus when he's by himself in this movie, I think that he's able to carry those emotions through. Like, I lost someone and I need to get them back.
Mhm.
Um, and, and how that's kind of a driving force for him. Right. And I think that that's kind of really, really nice because it's, not all Marvel pairings work out the way that Tony and Pepper work out. But I think Scott and Hope are on like are on the trajectory of working out because of Paul's performance. And for Tony and Pepper, I mean, they've been kind of the center of the Marvel universe.
They've
And
been pepperoni.
they're pepperoni, yes, and I love them. But a lot of it is just how much Gwyneth and RDJ just love each other.
Yeah.
And that carries through in their performances. They're absolute great friends and they love each other so much. And that's really great for fans to be able to see that, they're actually good friends in real life as well. So they get those like extra moments.
Mhm.
Um, but Pepper is at center for Tony. And Tony, I think it was RDJ is really pushing, for Gwyneth's role there because, I don't think he would have accepted another romantic interest for Tony. Part of Tony's journey is okay, playboy philanthropist, um, billionaire.
Mhm.
He did like kind of the Bruce Wayne role,
Right.
and now there's, I think I remember hearing, Joss Whedon talking about Avengers, and how he was rewriting pages and pages and pages day of because RDJ is like, no, I want to be like crazy billionaire philanthropist in a committed relationship.
Yeah.
So, um, here's Joss Whedon be like, okay, let me just write day of because this is what RDJ wants, right? And
Mhm.
really, that was RDJ really informing Tony's character because he knew that it would be, I think intuitively, they all kind of knew it would be really boring to see Tony just hop from
Not
bed to bed to bed.
Right.
Right. And so, and instead of being committed to this one girl. And I think, I read this article a few days ago. I think EW published it, how it was RDJ's choice not to say anything and his final moments as he's dying. Again, if you're hearing this, please have watched the film beforehand.
I think in the description we'll just write
I'm gonna
major
write
spoiler
spoilers.
alerts.
Yeah, I'll write
Yeah.
spoilers
But I mean, this entire recording is about the game, about Endgame. So like,
in.
I'm
Yes.
assuming our audience has watched it already, or if they haven't, they don't mind spoilers. I hope, but if not, we'll write it in the description.
Yeah, I'll put it in for sure.
And how, it was his choice not to say anything in those final moments, as like Rhodey and Peter and Pepper kind of say their goodbyes, but it's like, it's not true. He, having watched it yesterday, he does say something. He says Pep.
Mm. Mm.
The one word he chooses to say in his dying moments, because Pep is his grounding force, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's so beautiful to it's so tragic, because we do get his happy ending. We do get like marriage and like a child, right?
Yep.
And the cabin by the woods, and it's a great time. And yet we have that, cabin scene when he's like, I could just brush all of this away under a rug and go to sleep. Tell me, it's almost Tony saying like, please tell me to do that, because if I don't do that, we could lose this.
Mm-hmm.
Saying, but would you be able to rest otherwise? Because I think part of the great tension in Pepper's character is she wants that stability, and yet she knows that Tony's always going to be called to fight, and he's going to go fight.
Right.
And that moment saying, but could you rest, and could you live with yourself? And could I live with that version of yourself?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
her acceptance of Tony's choice in that moment and pushing him towards making that choice. And so when we get that final scene, we see, just this iteration of Pep and Pepper saying, we're going to be okay. You can finally rest now, which just, one, broke me.
Right, me
But
too.
two, really nice culmination of this relationship, right? Of
Absolutely.
these two individuals that have always been supportive of each other and have pushed each other forward.
Mm-hmm.
Because we might not see a lot of Pepper's life, but we do know she gets a bigger role in this company
Right.
because he's doing the Iron Man thing. And so we have like a successful CFO woman at the forefront who's
Mm-hmm.
able to still be feminine and still be able to do all these great women, like, traditional women things, right?
Right, right.
But do it in a very kick-ass and subtle way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that, um, yeah, I do love the kind of progressive steps that they made with these characters in terms of their relationships in this film.
Yeah, I did too. I really like what you were saying, and I think like one of the nothing really even happens with it, right? It's just he's kind of there is kind of this um right, like Peter is very much like I feel like Tony and Pepper are on this like shared page where he's like, oh yeah, like he's the adopted son, like, and
Mm-hmm.
like that really like because they have like the picture of him in the kitchen and stuff, or wherever it was when he was washing the dishes, um, and I was just like,
Kitchen.
yeah, and it just like really like hit me, and I was like, she's such a good person for Tony, like she like respects that, like there's this kid that is in my opinion, very likely the reason Tony agreed to fatherhood, like to biological fatherhood. Um, and like I don't know, it just really hit me in this like kind of special way. I've loved Tony and Peter together as like parent child since uh was it I don't recall if they started to have their relationship in Civil War, if it was in Spider-Man when it really started.
The
But
Civil War is where he first shows up, but the
okay,
relationship really starts developing in
in
Spider
Spider-Man,
Man.
yeah.
That's one of the things. One of the lines that also got me, where Tony tells Cap, bring back the people we lost. I hope so. Keep what I have from the last 5 years. I gotta. Right. There's
Mm-hmm.
desperation to keep what he has built with Pepper.
Right.
Um, comes through, and I think RDJ played that very well. The thing that I think really broke me in terms of Pepper and Tony's relationship was that moment that you pointed out, Jen, where she's like, "We're gonna be okay," right?
Yeah. Oh.
That was definitely one of my favorite moments.
Mm-hmm.
But on that note, I think we should probably start wrapping up. So, if you guys could just share what your favorite moments from the film were.
Okay.
Um, let's start with you, Tori. What was your
All
favorite
right.
moment?
So I think the moment I loved the most was at Tony's funeral, and they have his little like device thing in the thing, and it's like proof that Tony Stark had a heart, and like that just really like that's when I just couldn't control myself anymore. I was just like sobbing uncontrollably in the theater. But it was like for me, it was that blend of like tongue in cheek and emotions coming together, which I kind of felt is very Tony Stark.
Hmm.
And it just I really enjoyed that specific moment.
There's so many.
I know there's a lot.
uh,
All right, so let's
I,
do this then. Your favorite funny moment, and then your favorite emotionally
charged me.
destructive moment. Okay, charged is a nice word for it.
Oh, well, I don't know. Tori, what was your emotional charge moment
My
then?
emotional charged moment, I think. That's a hard one, man. Because again, there were so many. I really, again, Iron Man dying was really hard for me. I also really struggled with Natasha dying. That really, um, upset me as well. I think that scene was. I know that that scene got a lot of hate online. People were like, "That was stupid. I didn't like it." But I really liked it. Like she was kind of reaching in to pull her friend, who is like a brother to her, out of
Yeah.
Yes.
like depression by physical force. She's like, "Nope, you gotta let me go. Bye. Like, get your family."
Yeah.
Right.
So I've actually said this like 500 times to Jen, I think. And I feel like that moment, I was like, the first time I saw it, I was mad. I'm like, I am
Mhm.
not here to watch Hawkeye redeem himself. This man has not earned the right to be the hero in this
Mhm.
moment, right? So to me, when Natasha, I mean, it was like, yes, Natasha's the one that needs to die, and she's the one that has to like have this hero moment because that's what it is, right? It's a hero
Right.
moment. It broke me to pieces that she died though, because
Oh, I
I still
know.
can't. It hurts. I
Like,
don't like
Right.
the idea
And
of
it's
a Black Widow not existing, right?
yeah.
But at that point in the story, Hawkeye had done nothing to earn that moment, right?
Right.
And I like going back to what you said about her, Jen. She finally cleared that red off of her ledger. So I think that's why that moment was so emotionally impactful, right? And
mhm.
so important. Because that was her moment. It wasn't Hawkeye. I'm like that was I was not here for Hawkeye. I was here for her.
I completely agree. And like at that moment, all these years, and it's like Widow has worked to clear her ledger,
Yeah.
but in the span of like the 5 years, it's Hawkeye that now has like a red ledger,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right? His journey, like he's Jeremy Renner is going to come back as Hawkeye in a Disney Plus TV series. So that that ending for him gives him the opportunity to start clearing his ledger for
Right.
Natasha for that, right? And so for
Yeah.
us,
He owes it to her.
right, he owes it to her. So I think it puts them at an interesting like opposite crossroads for them. And it's a Buffy moment
Oh,
for Nat,
I know.
Yes.
It
Oh
right?
my
is.
God. Yes. It totally is. She saved the world a lot. Oh,
She
that's
saved the
so
world a lot.
Whedon. Why do you like? You still come back and haunt
Yeah,
our
but
dreams.
I think for me too in that moment, one of the things like because I like you, Brenda, initially was like, ugh, Hawkeye does not deserve this. But then I was thinking about it, and I was like, you know who does deserve this though? Hawkeye's kids, and she's being a damn good aunt to those kids right now. And like
Yeah,
it just like hit me so hard.
and
Daughter
that's
of
one of the
Ivan.
right, like that's the reason that Nat's like it's got to be me,
Hmm.
right? Because you have kids. If this works, I'm not taking their dad away from those kids,
Well,
right?
Absolutely.
when the Red Skull tells her daughter of Ivan, right? And he's like, "Oh, he knew my mother's name. Oh no, he knew your father's name, right?" And Nat's just looking at the floor, and she's like, "I didn't." Right?
Right.
Yeah.
That moment, tears. I couldn't. I'm
It's
like,
a moment where she realizes that like
your kids have a father, and they know you, and they're gonna come
Right.
back if this works.
right. And it's like I grew up not knowing that, and
Mm-hmm.
that hurt me in this, like in this way, and that motivated my self creation as a person. And so I think it was very much like her choice to go forward. It's a Buffy choice, right? She has to
Mhm.
go save the world, and she's doing it for her stupid sister, brother, Dawn slash Hawkeye.
Frickin' key.
All right. So that's okay. So you just successfully put Hawkeye in the same boat as Dawn, and I hate them both. Thank you, Jen. Beautiful. Not that I needed an excuse to hate Hawkeye. I went from not liking him to now hating him. Okay, I'm good.
Well, on that note, yeah. So, damn it, there's so many moments. I I love the moment, um, like I love the moment when we see Peter hugging the glove,
Mm.
and Carol says, "Do you have something for me?" And Peter's
For,
like, "Hi, I'm Peter." It's like, "Hi, Peter. Do you have something for me?" Right? Like it was that really nice moment of like, oh, like Peter possibly meeting his future mentor, right? In this
Yeah,
really
yeah.
hilarious way. And also kind of calling back to the Infinity Wars, like, oh, we're using our made up names now, right? Well, I'm Spider.
Doctor Strange. I'm Spider.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
And so I really love that moment. And then that leads to like the really big my fan moment was probably like, the all girl team up.
Mhm.
That was so great that yes, I want a female Avengers movie. I hope that, or like an A-team movie at some
Yeah,
point,
yeah.
right? That would be really, really awesome to see. But yeah, you know what? No, my favorite moment was like Steve holding the hammer. Yeah, and kicking ass.
That
I'm
was
sorry.
pretty
Go
awesome.
Oh my God, yes. But can we talk for a moment about the all women team like meetup? Because that formula was so built for it. It could have been so corny, and it wasn't. It was awesome. I almost leaped out of my chair and cheered. It was wonderful.
It was
Um,
great because it was like, oh yeah, there are these many female characters, superhero characters, right? And oh
Yeah.
my God, yeah, they
and
could
they're
very much
being
kick.
led by Captain Marvel, who is like everything I want to be when I grow up, even though Brie Larson's only really a few months older than I am, which is really sad. But anyway, it was just so epically beautiful, and I really like how it was shot.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, I think that it worked better the first time around than it did the second time around.
I
But
agree, actually.
I thought it was a great moment, and it speaks to like the bright future for this universe, right? It
Mhm.
speaks to all of these potential team ups
Yeah.
that are great. But yeah, I love the Steve holding the hammer. I mean, that was so kick ass. I mean, yes, I was like, yas, bitch. Uh,
The first time we watched it, the entire theater erupted cheering. We were
Yeah,
so
mine too.
everyone was just so happy. The second time we saw it, I think we saw it with a more upscale crowd, and so
Mm.
it wasn't as
They golf clapped.
like what
They golf
what
clapped like you hit the top of your hand to clap.
yes,
basically. I mean the emotion wasn't as visceral, at
Right.
least, or the reaction was.
I
Sorry, I'm
died when
sure
Thor was
everybody
like,
felt
"No, you take the little one."
yes, that was
it.
hilarious. Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, and
But
Thor
like,
cheering his buddy on, that was beautiful too.
Mhm.
yes, that was amazing. I just love that. Like, that was a great fan moment. But also, like, right after that, the emotionally charged moment that I love too was when the portals opened up and
Yeah.
T'Challa came out,
Oh.
and T'Challa and Steve exchanged the look, and it was very much like T'Challa understanding Steve had suffered a lot and he had battled alone a lot,
Mhm.
and it was a sigh of relief on Steve's part. but it was almost like a handoff,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It was a handoff of like, okay, here's the baton. You carry forth the MCU now. We're here for you. And it was very subtle, nice moment, but it was so emotionally charged for me. It's like I cry every time I see that scene. I cry.
Aww.
Yeah, definitely. It's just such a, you know, it's like an expanded version. You guys remember in Battle of the Bastards and Game of Thrones where Jon is like standing in front of the Bolton army, is like charging at him,
Oh yeah.
and he's just kind of alone on the battlefield because he's a moron.
I have nightmares
Right.
about that episode still.
He's an idiot. But anyway, in this, but like don't get me wrong, but that's another conversation, right?
That's another
But
podcast.
right.
Yes.
But with Avengers, it was just Steve is broken, like his arm is hurt, and all he can do is strap on that shield and keep fighting. But then to hear he has backup, like when he hears Sam's voice and he's like,
On
wait,
your left.
am I hallucinating? Right? Like he has this moment of like, wait, what? And then everyone starts showing up. Yeah, that is beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
absolutely
enjoyed
love
it
that
a lot.
movie.
I enjoyed it visually a lot as well. Just like like Jen had said, the portals opening, like kind of one by one, and then multiple opening at the same time, and I really enjoyed that as well visually.
Yeah. So what were your 2 moments to close out?
All right, so my favorite levity moment was definitely Paul Rudd bending over and telling but like actually not right before that where they're talking about Steve Rogers' butt and he salutes America's ass, which I thought was a really nice. He was wearing the suit, right? So you couldn't actually see his face, but we all know Paul Rudd, like not personally, but we've seen him in enough things that you can see his face when he's saluting the ass, right? And so I love that scene. And then immediately after, when like they're getting ready, he bends over and he tells Tony, flick me. I love that scene so much. I can't. I remember laughing my butt off the first time. I loved it just as much the second time. So that's definitely my favorite scene in terms of humor, at least.
Yeah.
But most of my favorite scenes with humor are definitely thanks to Paul Rudd because I think he was appropriately cast in Ant-Man.
He really was. You couldn't have asked for a better one.
Yeah, I agree.
Wasp too, I felt is very accurately cast.
Okay.
Who was that?
Wasp.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So a charge moment.
Wow, I don't know. It's I think a tie between that conversation between Steve and Tony, right? Where they're basically where he hands him back the shield and it's like, let's do this, and Tony dying. Yeah, because I was just quietly weeping in my seat, and I couldn't with everything I was feeling.
Yeah.
And I don't like even thinking about it now. I'm getting a little teary eyed because it's a hard moment to live through.
The end of
but
an
also
era
a
is
beautiful
always hard.
moment, right? Yeah, but I feel like I'm okay with this, right? Like this is how I could imagine 100 different endings for Tony that I would probably prefer. Because I want him to be happy and live to be an old cranky old man. But I'm okay with this ending for him. And I don't think that's something that you always get, narratively speaking, right? We've all had series that we love that were just, that was a great series, but that ending, wow, it sucked, right?
Right, absolutely.
That is not how I feel with Tony. I'm okay with this ending for him. And I think it's gonna be a tough act to follow. Don't get me wrong, I look forward to the future. I would love to see Riri Williams take on the Ironheart thing, but I think I'm gonna need a moment. I'm gonna need a moment before I can get there because I need to grieve Tony.
Yeah.
Absolutely. RDJ has been a blessing for the MCU, who's carried the MCU throughout these last 11 years. I'm excited for
the future.
The future, like the opportunities, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I think we have like young Avengers possibly,
I
right?
hope
Or
so.
champions, right? Like I think
Yeah.
that it opens up all these doors, and that's really exciting. But yeah, like we got to pour one out for Tony and RDJ because
Yeah. I'm hoping that we see that kind of pouring out mentality in the next Spider-Man movie that's supposed to theoretically be this like epilogue to Endgame. So
yes,
I want to see Peter's emotional state as he's becoming a hero with, his kind of former mentor being gone.
yes, and that's another thing we didn't get to in this podcast, which
Hmm.
is sad. But yeah, that Peter Tony relationship I think
Yeah.
is going to be very motivating in the Far From Home Spider-Man movie
Yeah, yeah.
because
It's definitely gonna thrust Peter into adulthood in a way that I don't think any of us expected.
right,
A
Hmm.
lot sooner than right. Because we've all been students, and it's like this is the moment where you got to figure it out on your own. You're not
Right.
gonna have your mentor anymore. And knowing, like, there's that element of knowing that he brought him back, right? Like, Peter is back because of Tony.
Hmm.
yes,
Is both beautiful but also so tragic, and so I think that
especially because Peter doesn't know that that's why they're back.
right.
He
Hmm.
doesn't know that RDJ, like that Tony was so fucked after what happened to him the first time. Like for him, it was a nap. He was
Right.
Yeah,
gone. For Tony, Peter was gone 5 years.
it was 5 years of guilt,
Right.
Hmm.
Of
5 years
this
of
kid in
having
this
to
position.
live, having to live with the fact that he lost the kid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so I think the fact that, Peter's, for Peter, all of this is fresh. And so, we still get that tragedy, right? Like, we still get that parallel tragedy of, okay, if it's not one, it's the other. And now we're going to see how Peter deals with that, which is exciting.
yeah, definitely. And much like adulthood, terrifying, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to what's to come. But like I said earlier, I need a moment to just
Grieve.
feel stuff and grieve. Yeah, which it's that happens with fictional characters. We've all lived through Harry Potter and still lived, and
And
we're gonna live
Buffy.
through this. But and Buffy, yeah.
And Buffy, yes.
Well, yeah. See, but now we're all gonna go home. Like we're gonna go to our respective corners and think about Buffy and cry because of it. So that's why I didn't want to bring it up. But whatever.
You're welcome.
Anyway, um, but yeah, I think it just we need a little space and a little time, and maybe to see Endgame a third time. I don't know. Um,
I want to do a
but yeah,
marathon at some point and watch all of them from start. I'm not in one sitting because I can't. But like over the course of like 2 months or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that's definitely something that the Marvel universe has earned.
Yeah.
But yeah, I enjoyed it. So let's finish off with rating the movie on an A through F scale. What would you give Endgame, Tori?
Um. Well, you know me. I'm always a pretty high grader. But I'd give it probably an A minus. There were a few things that I would have changed personally, but I overall thought it was very well done, and it was a nice finish off to this era, and it was a nice kiss goodbye. So I'd say an A minus.
All right, Jen.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with like A minus A. Like I think that I think Game of Thrones writers have always said like that's kind of what they hope for their finale, like to have the Breaking Bad finale of fans debating whether it's an A minus or A.
Hmm.
I think I don't know. For me right now, Game of Thrones is aiming at a B plus finale, but discussion. But
At
I think
best.
at best, right? I think that I definitely think Endgame and this 11-year trajectory has been A minus.
Yeah.
I yeah. I'm gonna go a little higher than you. Give it an A.
Very
Awesome.
Um, yeah, I'm usually a little tougher on stuff, but I think given that I'm satisfied with Tony's end and that I got my time travel love resolved, I'm good. I'll give
It's
it
an
an
A
A.
minus because I didn't get stucky. Just kidding. I'm
Yeah,
just
but you
kidding.
know what? I love Peggy.
I
I
do
really
too.
do.
I do too.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. Well, this has been our analysis of Endgame or Avengers Endgame. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
We will see you next time.
We'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. See
Bye.
you.